This is Tyler O'Neill, a managing editor at The Daily Signal, and I'm joined by Josh Hammer, the opinion editor at Newsweek. Great to have you here, Josh.
Tyler, thanks for having me. Big fan of the Daily Signal. Thank you guys for picking up my column, and I love the work you do.
Yeah, and right back at you. So I wanted to hear, what it's like being at Newsweek, as being in more of the mainstream world, but also a very strong conservative. How you navigate those things, and I think Newsweek does a great job, the opinion section, of having both sides legitimately, and I want to congratulate you on that.
I appreciate that, thank you. So Newsweek is in a rare place as far as the mainstream media is concerned, where it is old school liberal. So for example, I have a few bosses, depending on where the masthead or structure you want to look. Some of them lean right of center, some of them lean left of center. But the point is that even kind of the left of center higher ups at Newsweek are liberal. They're old school liberals.
They're
kind of
lowercase l.
Yeah, freedom to disagree, kind of John Stuart Mill style liberals. Not this woke progressive nonsense. And if you look at Newsweek's mission statement, which we fairly prominently display literally in the bottom of the website, if you scroll all the way down, there's a separate link, if I recall, that just says mission statement. It says right there what we're trying to do, which is Newsweek exists to air the full diversity of political views. We are trying to air the full discourse. We're trying to kind of give a voice to opinions that may not be platformed in other mainstream media outlets. And the opinion section, which I've led now for almost 3 years, is kind of one of the embodiments, is one of the easiest ways to fulfill that mission statement, because by definition, it's the easiest vehicle to air all sides. So if you look at our op-ed section, like you said, I am obviously conservative, but we are publishing a lot of stuff that I do not necessarily personally agree with. We publish a lot of stuff that I do personally agree with, but the point is, I have 4 deputy editors. I would say 2.5 of them are liberal, 1.5 are conservative. My deputy, Badia Ungar Sargon, is the one who's a little more politically heterodox. But the point is, we've got a nice mix. And it's been a really fun experiment. And I also host my own podcast through Newsweek now, and write a weekly newsletter as well. So it's been a fun place to work for the past few years. I've really enjoyed it.
So where do you see the conservative movement going? Where's the energy? Where are the focuses? And how strongly should we be pushing back against this woke culture?
The short answer is very strongly. This is the kind of thing that you can't just live and let live with, because they're coming after us with all they've got. They're coming after us literally every step of the way, whether it is government collusion with big tech, whether it is this collapse of the public-private distinction that I've written about in the past. This is kind of the whole thesis of kind of the national conservatism that I and many others espouse now, which is, what do you do when the blurring of the lines between the state and the private sector have blurred to this extent? So, back in the day, I think kind of an old school kind of classical liberal might say, when a certain kind of corporation is exercising this kind of power, the traditional kind of supply side classical liberal remedy for that is to lower barriers to entry, to get more competition. But as we've seen now with the Twitter files and over again over the past few years, when it comes to the tech firms, and not just the tech firms, also the biomedical security state, there's just this ridiculous collusion happening right now. And then you extend that further to kind of as you intimated, the genuine kind of excesses, the pernicious excesses of the woke ideology, whether it is the drag queens with the minors, the transgender stuff, the race extremism, the happening in the schools that Chris Rufo has documented over and over again, right? We have no choice but to fight back. And I'm biased, but I live in Florida. I get to see what our governor and our legislature are doing every day. I think that's a pretty good model, and it necessarily is going to involve a more kind of muscular, hands-on approach to matters of political economy. So, just this week, the week that we're recording this, Governor DeSantis had an excellent op-ed in the Wall Street Journal talking about why he fought against the Walt Disney Company. And he has some language that might seem like fairly provocative, I think, to kind of more older school, kind of true classical liberal types, where he basically says that because corporate America in so many respects has now become just an extension of the state, they are in tandem pushing this woke ideology, that what follows is that what is good for corporate America then is not necessarily synonymous with what is good for the American people. And that's a crucial point to make, because it's a sharp contrast with kind of that old quote. It's actually somewhat of a misquote, but the quote that is popularly attributed to Calvin Coolidge, that the business of America is business. That's a huge distinction. And, from my perspective, that's kind of what I'm looking for. But we have no choice. I mean, I genuinely think that anti-wokeism can and should be kind of the glue that holds together all of this, the conservative movement. But the key point here is that the anti-wokeism is, yes, it's hard, it entails like a pugnacious culture warring, but it also will entail some degree of political economy tweaks as well.
And presenting a positive view also as an alternative, not just negative all the time. Right?
No, of course, right? I mean, one major and sometimes very valid criticism of some of these kind of newer, younger forces on the right these days, that they're full of doomers and doomerism and like we're all going to hell. And, my friend David Boy's Substack is literally called Late Republic Nonsense. And, it's like a half joke, but it's also like half serious. But look, we have to be optimistic because we have no other choice. I mean, America still is. I love this country so much. I mean, not to get kind of like a little sappy, but like I'm born Abraham Lincoln's birthday. He's my favorite hero in American history.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and like if Lincoln could face down what he faced and ultimately emerge with America not extinguished from the face of the earth, then it follows that we should be able to do the same with these losers. And as my friend David Azra likes to say, that's fundamentally what these people are. These people that are trying to trans the kids, that are doing the drag queen story hour nonsense, that are trying to shove critical race theory garbage and tell second graders that they're racist because they happen to be white. Yeah. These people are losers. And winners can defeat losers, but being a winner necessarily entails a vision for victory. And that's part of what I and others in this cause are trying to do day to day, is try to just paint the vision for what we ultimately hope and perhaps expect will be victory.
Yeah, and you've recently gotten engaged. Congratulations.
Thank you.
In Israel, no less. Would you talk to the situation that's going on the ground there? I believe there's a discussion changing the Constitution, that now there's almost push from American forces against Netanyahu and his vision, and I'd like to hear more of how you see what's happening there, the protests that they're seeing on the streets, and where is Israel headed?
Sure. Yeah. So my fiance is Israeli. She was raised mostly in Florida, but most of her family is there. And, I follow Israeli politics pretty closely. So we're recording this on Friday at CPAC, and my panel in like a couple hours now is actually going to be on this exact topic. And I actually debated, of all people, Alan Dershowitz on this topic back in Florida, where I live, just 3 nights ago. And what's happening is the Netanyahu government, so Bibi comes back into power in a November election. His coalition is formally sworn in late December. And one of his leading priorities, which is currently being pushed by a very courageous member of the Knesset by the name of Simcha Rothman, is to reform the judiciary, which in Israel it's out of control. So Tyler, as you may know, I'm in media now, but my background is law. I'm a law guy by background. I clerked for a federal judge. I still do a lot of Federal Society lectures at law schools. I've published constitutional law scholarships. So that is actually like my area of expertise, so to speak. I guess to the extent I have that expertise. So by contrast to America's system, which I think is superior, it's superior basically to any other one in the world I'm aware of, but it's definitely superior to Israel's. We have very clear rules. So for example, in the United States, in order to get your day in federal court, you need standing. You need to show that you have an injury and it is relatable to the harm, that the court can redress it. Israel has no concept of standing. Anyone can bring any suit for any reason. Furthermore, There is no written constitution over there. They have basic laws which have achieved quasi-constitutional status, is generally the term that is applied there. But the court has arrogated to itself the power to overturn not just Knesset, that's a parliament, not just Knesset-passed legislation, but to overturn the basic laws themselves. And bear in mind also that the Judicial Selection Committee, which is how they choose new justices over there, is comprised of 9 members right now, a plurality or majority of whom, or I can't remember the exact number, but the point is sitting justices on the court effectively, what it is? It's a minority, but they have veto power. So sitting justices on the Judicial Selection Committee effectively choose their own successors. And they're all selected from the same pool of typically liberal, secular Tel Aviv elites, which is very different than the government, which is comprised of the full panoply of diverse Israeli society. So it's a huge cultural clash. It's a huge legal clash. The point is, the court is full of left-wing garbage. And this is a right-of-center government, and anything the government tries to do can easily be stopped by the court. absent change. But more generally
Why
speaking,
does that sound familiar?
exactly. So the parallels to the United States are actually shocking. So if you basically just replace the court in Israel with the administrative state or the bureaucracy here, it's basically the exact same thing. If you look what happened to Trump here, it is remarkably similar. And the parallels between Netanyahu and Trump are actually shocking, right? I mean, they're both under indictment for frivolous grounds. The prosecutors, the deep state, they hate Trump here, they hate Netanyahu. The parallels are actually really astounding. But this is it's become a very toxic debate in Israel. There's been mass protests, as I think the whole world has seen, and foreign leaders like Joe Biden have seen fit to weigh in. I think that's stupid. This is an internal dispute to Israel. Let them figure it out themselves. There's no reason for the U.S. or any other country to weigh in on a constitutional structure question, frankly. But we'll see. I mean, the numbers suggest that the coalition will still be able to ram this through.
Well, that's good news. It sounds like they need some constitutional reform overall. Or a constitution to begin with.
Yeah, so a written constitution would be a good idea. Like if I were there, if I were alive and living in Israel when they found that state, I would have probably advised they write a constitution. Unfortunately, it's probably difficult for them to do so now because the society is so divided, and query whether they could actually have a Philadelphia 1787 style convention. I'm not sure what that would look like. But yeah, like actually writing down a document would go a very long way. But the key point, so again, just comparing, contrasting constitutional law here to there, the United States, Article 6 of our Constitution says that this Constitution and all treaties and statutes passed pursuant to it shall be the, quote, supreme law of the land. Put another way, the Constitution is supreme. We have a system of constitutional supremacy where all three branches of government are subordinate to the Constitution. Israel does not have a constitution. By contrast, it was predicated upon kind of British-style parliamentary supremacy. But in that system, it makes no sense for the court to just override the parliament either. So they've got to figure it out, but I think they're going to do so. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
Yeah, hopeful. So what are you watching right now on the state side that's most interesting from a political lens, news lens? Right now we're at CPAC. There's a lot of energy, but there seems to be this division in the Republican Party. But, where do you see things going, and what should we keep an eye out for?
I mean, it's hard not to ignore the elephant in the room, which is the 2024 stuff, and I obviously am paying very close attention to that. Living in South Florida like I do, that's where Trump lives in Mar-a-Lago, and it's DeSantis' state. So
ground zero for both. Right?
Yeah, it really is kind of ground zero, right? So it's kind of hard for me not to pay attention to it, but at my core, Tyler, I like politics. I like horse race politics. I follow the polls. I like the polls. I love watching kind of the debates. I enjoyed it probably too much back in 2016. But at my core, I care about substance, and I care about policy, and that's really what animates me. So what I'm paying probably even closer attention to than that, and that's kind of my column that came out today, the day that we're recording this, it's really just where the Republican Party and the movement is heading. And my column today was basically arguing that a prioritization of parents and children, and above all the family, that is the focal point of the new Republican coalition. That is the focal point of this new kind of more blue-collar coalition outside of the Fortune 500, Wall Street. I mean, this is kind of the Rust Belt, Sun Belt coalition that the GOP has been building.
And the traditional values coalition.
The traditional values coalition.
Bringing together, the conservative Jews, the Christians, and we pray to God, perhaps some Muslims who are, obviously not radical Islamists.
Well, hey, look, funny enough, a lot of people don't realize this. I think a higher percentage of Muslims voted for President Trump in 2020 than Jews did. I'm obviously Jewish, and I am not happy about that. I wish my people were less politically stupid, but although I should say that Orthodox Jews actually vote Republican at like an 85-15 clip. It's like astronomical. Like Orthodox Jews literally vote Republican at a higher rate than like Mormons or evangelicals. So it's really just the non-Orthodox Jews that are a problem. But I forgot where we were going. Okay, yeah. So the future of the coalition. I pay close attention to what's happening in kind of the more populist ends of the American political spectrum. So I've been looking a lot at kind of like banning drag queen story hour, bans on transgender surgeries, bans on TikTok. Right. And I guess what I'm trying to say is kind of the old school, I think, Republican mentality to statecraft and statesmanship was more about protecting any semblance of rights whatsoever, Whereas I'm now paying attention more to kind of legislating, whether it's limitations or bans, in pursuit of the common good. And that has to include kind of protecting vulnerable children and above all kind of preserving the sanctity of the family. And that was kind of my column today, and that's really kind of what I'm focused on domestically from a policy perspective right now.
Yeah, and that covers so much from parental rights to, even entertainment.
Big tech, all of it,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Josh, where can the people follow you?
So my syndicated column goes up at a lot of places, including the Daily Signal, I might add. My podcast, The Josh Hammer Show, is on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I've got a weekly newsletter, The Josh Hammer Report, that you can subscribe to via Newsweek. And then on Twitter, I'm just Josh_Hammer.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us, and have a great CPAC.
You too, Tyler.